All right, today we're going to be talking about the Speedland GS PDX. I've had my eye on Speedland ever since they came out with their first pair of running shoes a couple years ago. And so when I went into my local running store, Ogden Running Company, and the owner and I were talking, he said that he was going to start carrying Speedland. And so I jumped on the opportunity to order a pair of Speedland through the store. And so I am not affiliated with Speedland at all. And so I'm really excited to give you a review today on this shoe. But to start it off, I've been watching the brand for a while now, and one of the things that's interesting to me is that they're willing to pay for a shipping label when you're done with these to send them back to them to recycle them. And I thought that was an interesting and really cool thing that a brand is willing to do, is to build a shoe in a way that it's easy for them to recycle it. And so when you're done with these, you send them back and apparently they will recycle them. And what I think would be even cooler to incentivize this recycling is if they could offer some like 10% back or 10% towards your next pair of Speedland, because the price on these shoes is absolutely insane. Coming in at $310 if you order the plate like I did, the carbon plate that you put in there. That's incredibly expensive. Even without the plate, they're at $275, and that's a lot of money for a pair of running shoes. And so my goal today is to help you decide whether or not these shoes are worth $310 for you. So let's jump into the fit and sizing. On their website, they are saying that you should order a half size up. So I generally wear a size 9, and so according to their recommendations, I should have ordered a 9.5. I did not. I stuck with a size 9, and I can see why they would want you to order a half size up. But for me, it ended up being perfectly fine. I always wear a size 9 in all of my running shoes. I ordered a size 9 and it worked for me. However, with the insert in these shoes, if you look, there's a bit of a lip that goes around the front of it. Most running shoe inserts are flat. This has a lip in the front, and that is the little bit of material that might make it so you want to size up and give yourself a little bit of extra room. I do know some people that have just taken a razor blade to this and just cut that material away, and it has kept them wearing their normal size. Outside of the length, the width of these shoes, if you look at them, there is a wider toe box here. Now I'm gonna say they aren't as wide as Ultras, but they are wider than most running shoes. And for me, I actually really enjoyed them. I've been running in some Ultras, and so moving to these, they were slightly narrower, but they aren't nearly as narrow as my Salomon shoes. And so what these are kind of like a happy medium between Ultra and your average running shoe. And so if that's what you're looking for, if Ultras are too wide for you and most running shoes are too narrow, this could be a good option for you. Moving on to the weight, coming in at 10.5 ounces, these are not the heavy shoes, but they also aren't the lightest trail running shoes on the market. These are very much average, but they feel light. They feel light and agile, especially when you're wearing them. When you pick them up, they just feel like an average weight running shoe. But once you get them on your feet, they feel pretty good. Moving on to the outsole here, they have this Michelin rubber out here. And if you look at some of the lugs, they have like two heights to them. They have like a lower height and then a higher one. And on their website, they talk about how you can clip those off. They were using some sort of clipping tool. And I don't know how many people have a tool like that you can use, but if you do want less traction, then you can cut them off. I think their website said that these lugs are 4.5 millimeters deep or tall, however you want to say that, which is pretty aggressive. I think some of the most aggressive shoes out there are 5 millimeters, and a lot of the average ones are somewhere around 3. So they're on the more aggressive side. For me, I like aggressive trail running shoes. I want as much traction as possible, and so I will definitely be leaving that extra bit of traction. There's also an interesting little circle here right in the middle, and it says cut for drainage. And I thought that was really weird. But if you look at the insole, There's also holes right here that are directly above that spot where you would cut for drainage. And so if you're going to be running a race, or if you're running a route that has lots of river crossings, then that's something you might want to cut in order for the water to drain out. I rarely have river crossings. I rarely run with wet feet. And so I don't want dirt and stuff to get up in through the bottom there, which I assume could happen. I don't know because I didn't cut it, but I assume that dirt and stuff can get up in there once you cut that. And so for me, I'm gonna leave it covered. For other people, they might want to cut it, but I thought that was an interesting way to allow your shoe to drain. On the durability side, I am seeing a little bit of wear and tear, but it's almost to be expected. The only thing that makes me hesitate is that if I'm comparing this to the Vibram outsoles that are on my Nike Zagamas or my Ultras that I just recently reviewed, those had 0 wear and tear after 50, 75 miles. These have somewhere between 40 and 45 miles on them, and I'm seeing wear and tear. It's nothing to be concerned about. I still think you're going to get hundreds of miles of use out of these, but I do think that the first thing that's going to go on these shoes will not be the midsole, it will be the outsole, this traction here. So I understand that sometimes you want softer rubber for better grip in certain scenarios, but just understand that these do have the softer rubber here apparently, because they are showing some signs of wear and tear. Now moving on to the midsole, and this is where you're really going to see this shoe start to stand out from many of the other shoes on the market today. So if you look at the heel, the stack height in the heel is 37 millimeters. The stack height in the forefoot is 30 millimeters, giving you a 7 millimeter heel to toe drop, which is substantial, but it's definitely not a deal breaker. I've run in higher drop shoes and had no issues, and I didn't have any issues with the drop here. And so what makes this shoe different is that there are apparently 2 midsoles. One midsole, I think, is just what you see here, and it looks a lot like the Boost material that Adidas had. In fact, it feels a lot like the Boost material that Adidas had. One of my favorite road shoes of all time were some of the Adidas Boosts, and I actually qualified for Boston running in those, and I loved the responsiveness of that midsole. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think that they've incorporated some similar technology here, because it is a very similar feel. I ran in Adidas for years, not only road shoes, but also trail shoes that had that Boost material. And so whatever they've got going on in here, I think they call it PBAS. I'm not 100% sure. That's just, I watched one of their YouTube videos. Don't quote me on that. That's just what the guy said. But then the other part of the midsole, or the other midsole, is the insert. And this is a substantial insert. There is a lot of material here, and it seems to be made of some similar material. It's very springy. Like it does not give and stay down. It pops right back up when you compress on it. And so a lot of what is going on with the midsole is in this insert. And at the bottom of this insert is where you put the carbon plate. And we'll talk about the carbon plate in a little bit. But as far as this material goes, they say that it has world-class energy return, and I'm going to have to agree with that. I have run in probably 1 or 2 other shoes that I would say even come close to the energy return that you're gonna get from these shoes. And I attribute it, and they attribute it, to the material that they've used in the midsoles, both midsoles, both the insert and whatever this is, the secondary midsole, or maybe this is the secondary, I don't know. Whatever they've got going on, it seems like they know what they're doing. I would not call this stuff hard though, but I also wouldn't call it soft. It does not, like I said, it does not compress and give like a normal EVA would. This is very springy, it pushes back, and I think that's where you're getting the energy return. And so it's somewhere between soft and hard, and I mean, I sound like Goldilocks here, but like it's just right. Like I seriously think that whatever they've got going on here is what makes this shoe stand out. It's the midsole. And so moving on to this carbon plate though, this carbon plate is super interesting. I found it very interesting that they made it removable. And apparently it's so that it can flex independently, whatever that's supposed to mean. All I know is that I really liked having the carbon plate. I pulled the plate out, put the insert back in, and ran with one shoe without a plate and one shoe with the plate. And I could tell a big difference. And I've talked to people who have pulled the plate out and they didn't feel a difference, or they liked it better without the plate. And so this is going to be very subjective. And so where this really made a difference for me, and how I really noticed the work and the benefit that this carbon plate has, is when your foot strikes the ground in any normal shoe without a plate like this, you're going to feel a deep compression, a sinking down of your foot into that part of the midsole. Whether that's going uphill and it's in your forefoot here, you'll feel the compression in the forefoot, or coming down and you're like heel striking, or if you run flat-footed, like under the wherever you're striking, you're going to feel a compression. With this plate in here though, you can feel how it distributes the weight evenly across the midsole. And so when you're compressing down, it's compressing down more uniformly across the midsole. And I think that is where you're getting some big benefits on energy return. And I also wonder about the durability, or the lifetime responsiveness of the midsole. Is since you're not compressing in one single spot every time, or not in a few spots most of the time, you're doing it uniformly across most of the midsole throughout your running. And so I wonder if that will help in the long run keep the midsole from compressing and losing the energy return. So that's my theory. It's not backed by anything besides my personal thoughts as I tried these out and ran in them. And I could feel, especially when I had one shoe without it and one shoe with it, I could really feel how the carbon plate distributed my weight, and it gave me a little bit more energy return in the shoe that had the carbon plate. As a side note, for anyone that needs a stability shoe, I'm a neutral runner, but I did notice that these shoes do not have a ton of support on the inside of your foot. And so if you tend to pronate, this shoe might not be a good shoe for you. Or just to check, maybe go on a run in them and test them out first before you go home with them. So just keep that in mind if you are a stability runner. But as an overall kind of summary of this midsole, I'm just absolutely blown away. And before I move on, I need to talk about the protection here. I've run in a lot of highly protective shoes as of late, from the Ultras to the Zagamas to the S-Lab Genesis. I've run in a lot of high cushion, ultra protective shoes, and I have never run in a pair of shoes that is more protective than these. You seriously do not feel anything. And with that comes some of the issues that I've talked about before with high cushion, highly protective shoes, and it's that you don't have any ground feel. You have no sense of what's under your foot. And so when you come down on a rock that comes to a point that could potentially hurt, you could adjust your stride when you feel that rock. With these, you don't feel the rock, and so you put all your weight down, and before you know it, your ankle will give, because all your weight is on your foot, and it's at a point, and so your foot has to go one way or the other, and so you're going to experience a little bit of roll in your ankles there. So if you have ankle issues, maybe remove that plate, remove any extra protection there so that you can get a little bit more ground feel. Because on the most, I didn't have any issues on like just normal flat single track or gravel road. Zero issues, and I loved the protection. But on the single track that was ultra technical, very rocky, I rolled my ankle a lot. And I don't have ankle issues. I didn't sprain an ankle or anything like that, but I got pretty frustrated a couple times with how often I was rolling my ankle. So just keep that in mind. With these high cushion, ultra protective shoes, you might want to think twice about it if you have ankle issues. Moving on to the upper here, this upper is made out of something that they're called Dynama material, whatever it is supposed to be incredibly durable and keep your foot protected, but also last a long time. And I am absolutely so satisfied with the upper. The upper is fantastic. I have absolutely no issues. This is incredibly breathable. You get substantial protection here around your toes. And then of course you've got the BOA system for lacing, which again is a throwback to a pair of Adidas shoes that I used to run in that had the BOA system. Once you get used to this system, it is absolutely fantastic. It dials in a fit like you won't feel on pretty much any other pair of running shoes, especially with these because they have the dual system, which tightens the forefoot with this first dial, and then the second dial kind of tightens in more around your ankle and the upper part of the top of your foot. And so in terms of upper, I have absolutely no issues. I have nothing but good things to say. The heel counter or the heel cup here is absolutely fantastic. I had no rubbing, no issues. But there is a small caveat. If any of you have done the Ben Lomond Trail here locally in Ogden, you know that that trail is incredibly rutted out, meaning that the trail kind of comes to a V like this, given the fact that motorcycles are allowed on it and a lot of rain will rut it out. And so a lot of times when you're running, your foot is tilted to the inside of that V on both sides. And so when you're running, you're kind of like this. And I noticed a lot on the really steep rutted sections that my foot would roll a little bit to the inside and my foot would push up against that BOA system right there, this one right here, and it is pretty rigid below that circle, below the dial here. And so when my foot would roll, it would pinch that rigidity right here would pinch up against my foot. I'm having a really hard time demonstrating it, but it's essentially like having that dial right there and then folding your foot a little bit, and so the top of the dial was digging into my foot. That is only on a rutted out trail. I never would have ever noticed it on any other trail, and if you're careful and you can run more in the middle of the trail instead of, you know, on some sections when you're coming down, it's hard to avoid not putting your feet up on the outsides of the V's. But just so you know, that's one issue that I had. I don't think that it'll be an issue for most people. I just wanted to point it out. And they also have this sock-like fit around the top that's supposed to keep debris out. This is very similar to some of the Salomon shoes that I run in, and I think it does a fair job at keeping debris out. I wouldn't say that it keeps all debris out, and it's not nearly as good as some of like the Nike Zagamas. I think their debris guard around the top here, this sock-like stretchy material that's supposed to cinch up close to your foot to keep rocks out. I think the Zagamas do a better job. These do as well of a job as the Salomons, and I think it's awesome to have. I don't think it's necessary by any means, but it's definitely something that I like to see in running shoes now. Now moving on to the most subjective part of my review, and that would be the looks. I think these look freaking cool. Some of the best looking trail shoes on the market today. However, if you look at them from the top like that, they look really weird, but from the side and from the front, I never get compliments on my trail shoes, on my running shoes ever. But on my first run, on my 20 miler, I got 3 strangers to tell me that they liked my shoes. And I don't know if they knew who Speedland is. I don't know if they knew that these are incredibly expensive shoes, or if they just liked the looks and the color and the bright, bold, loudness of these shoes. But anyways, I think that they're awesome, and a lot of other people thought so as well. So I'd probably give them like a 9 out of 10 on looks. All right, so in summary, what I am always looking for is a pair of shoes that feels like a natural extension of my foot. I do not want to worry about my feet. I don't even want to notice the shoes that I'm running in. And so how did these measure up? I absolutely love these shoes. There is not a single red flag, not a single problem with this shoe that would keep me from recommending these shoes to anyone, except for the price. At $300, and I say 300, it's actually 310, and I say 310 because I think it's worth getting the carbon plate in these. At $310, that is absolutely ridiculous. I'm sorry, but it is. I have a hard time telling anyone, unless they have a ton of money to burn, that this shoe is worth it. I think this shoe is probably worth $200. And, you know, maybe since this is a brand new company and they're having, you know, issues with manufacturing or something like that, maybe the price of the shoe will come down over time and Speedland will bring its price down closer to $200, because at $300, I have a hard time seeing how these could be worth it, unless, and here's my caveat, unless these shoes last, what is it, 33%, a third, 33% longer than any normal pair of running shoes. And, you know, the jury's still out there, but if I look at the outsole here and the little bit of wear and tear that I'm seeing on this Michelin rubber, I don't think that it's gonna last much longer than any normal pair of running shoes. The midsole, I think, might, but like I said, the jury's still out there. And so the question is for you, whether or not you think this is worth $310. I think this is probably one of the best running shoes on the market. And so if you are a gearhead and you want to have the latest, greatest, most technologically advanced pair of running shoes, you're looking at it right here. Like, this is top of the line. But for the average everyday runner, I have a hard time telling that person that they need these shoes. I think there are other shoes that you'll get more bang for your buck than these. So anyways, I wrap that up by saying, like I said, these are some of my favorite shoes of all time. Are they my favorite of all time? I don't know yet. I will continue to run in these, and I will keep you updated in the comments in terms of durability, like on the outsole, and anything else that goes wrong with these shoes or goes right with these shoes. I will keep everyone updated. And so anyways, I hope this video helped you decide whether or not these shoes are the right pair of shoes for you. So thanks for watching.